weeks since we've been here live with you. So we're going to wait just a minute for our family and friends to join us. We're so excited today. Hey, we're in Texas, and yesterday it was 84 degrees. We were able to barbecue and grill. And it's a good thing we did because it is now cold. It's cold 51 degrees. Today is the Super Bowl. Super Bowl for all of you Super Bowl fans. It's Philadelphia Eagles against Kansas City Chiefs. Now, I don't have a specific team because I'm really not, that much of a football fan. But if I had to choose, I would choose Philadelphia because it's close to New York. But I would choose Kansas City because I like the Red Kingdom song. So those of you that know me know I like Red Kingdom. Okay. Anyway, so as we're waiting for some people to come on, I hope you've had a blessed week this week, and I hope you are energized and ready for this upcoming week. I am a teacher, so I'm looking forward to spring break, which is in like just a few weeks. I'm excited about that. It's been a great year. It's been a long year as usual, but it's been a good one. DJ keeps us very busy with all of his sports. He plays basketball and 7-on-7, and what else do you play? Baseball. So he played baseball on Friday night as well as basketball. They did really well in basketball, not so good in baseball, right? Did you win? No, they didn't win baseball. But we have high hopes for the Eagles. Eagle fans, put your hands up. Okay. So I think we are ready here. I'm going to give you some information on what we're going to be looking at today. We've been in Acts chapter 20 for a little while, which is great. And not last week, but a couple weeks before, we talked about Luke being present in the scriptures. Can you make that a little big, or is that comments that we can see?
Just put the comments.
Okay, so we can see your comments when you post them, which is great. Please feel free to comment while we are live. Even when we are not live, we go back and look at the comments. So thank you for all of your comments, and thank you for participating. We talked about Luke being on the journey with Paul last week. This week, we are talking about Paul as well. The topic for today, or the subject matter, what do we want to call that?
The subject.
The subject or the title for today, sit down, Popcorn. Popcorn always joins us, is Let Me Count the Days. Excuse me, I'm talking. My breath must be okay. Let me count the days. And we're going to come from Acts chapter 20, verse 6 through, get this, Acts chapter 21, verse 17. So it's a lot of reading today, but I think DJ is going to handle that today. So without further ado, let's get started with Let Me Count the Days. If you have your notebook, which I have mine, I always do, please write down the title for today. And I hope to enjoy every moment of this lesson on today. May God bless you on this lesson. Please pray as he speaks and gives us the word on today that we will all get a revelation and that he will be strengthened by the word and receive another revelation on the word today. So let me introduce to you my husband, Demetrius Perry.
I'm already here.
He's already here.
Now I was just relaxing and thinking because it's a lot of material today. We talked, we said 20 verse 6 all the way through 21 verse 17.
Yeah, let me get that together.
That's a lot of material. And today's Super Bowl Sunday, so I know I'm probably the one thing that's holding y'all up from making chips and dips and getting everything ready to go for your Super Bowl get-togethers. As Tabitha mentioned, we got started yesterday, and I'm glad we did because it's cold out there today.
It is a little chilly.
And it was nice. It was 80-something degrees, so we were out on the patio just chilling. My man David was barbecuing, and we just had ourselves a good time. And we'll pick it up for the game today, but the Super Bowl is special for us. It's always a special day because it reminds me of Tabitha and I's second date. We had a date on like Wednesday of that week of 2007. And on the Super Bowl, I could have had any number of friends over, but for whatever reason, I wanted her to come watch the Super Bowl with me. And that's really funny because during our first date, which was like Wednesday that week, she, told me she doesn't like sports. She doesn't really watch sports. And so when the Super Bowl came up and I was trying to figure out what I was going to do, was I going to go to somebody else's party? Was I going to watch it at home or have somebody over? my everything in me was like, hey, I want to be with her on the Super Bowl. I want to watch the Super Bowl with her. Yeah, I know what she told me, but I want to watch the Super Bowl with her. And so I called, and she was kind of surprised, but she managed to come over because I said, hey, don't worry about I know you don't like the game. Don't worry about the game. Just come. The commercials are great. The commercials are great. And so she came over. And so as soon as we got to the first commercial, I was so focused on hosting and trying to, make sure she was straight because I knew she didn't want to be there for the Super Bowl, but she was just coming to hang out and be with me. I jumped up and ran and grabbed, I was on some gummy bears or worms or something, chips. I can't remember what but I got up and I missed that commercial and I never got a chance to see it again.
That was a commercial with the Snickers. I don't know if anybody ever saw it, but it was two guys and they had a Snickers bar and they both had one in the Snicker bar and they were crunching and they looked at each other and they're like, ah! So yeah, never seen that one again, but it was really funny.
Anyway, so this will make 19 Super Bowls we've been able to be together, with 17 of them being physically located together. Two of them I was in Afghanistan, the other one I was in Iraq. So, but 17 out of 19 Super Bowls that we've been together, we've been able to have a little get together and watch the game. So that's what we'll do again tonight. Years are starting to add up. So I should have said, let me count the years.
Yeah.
It's counting today. We're counting. I want to do something a little different today. When I started talking about how we had to cover a lot of material versus chapter 20, verse 6, all the way through chapter 21, verse 17, everybody was all, well, I'm not reading all of that. And well, maybe we can let the thing read it. Or
it wasn't everybody. It was just me. DJ said he wasn't reading.
Nobody was volunteering to read. So we're not going to do a lesson like we normally do, where we read and talk about that particular passage.
Okay.
I'll explain how we're going to do it here in a second, but it's going to be different than we normally do. And because it's going to be a little bit different than we normally do, we might run out of time. And I don't want to really run out of time without giving you what I really want you to write down in your notes. And so what I'm going to do today is I'm going to give it to you out of order. I'm going to give you your notes, what I want you to write down.
Okay.
And then we will go back and do the lesson. That makes sense?
Sure.
All right. So the first thing is never stop learning.
Okay. Never stop learning.
Never stop learning. DJ, what happens when you stop learning?
Start making money.
Now, what have I taught you?
Knowledge.
He stopped learning already. If you stop learning, you will die.
I was gonna say you will die. Yeah.
If you stop learning, you will die. You won't adapt. You won't keep up with what's the current technology.
Mm-hmm.
You won't understand how you got to move and shake to be able to get food and shelter and all. If you stop learning, you will die. So never stop learning. If you don't remember anything else I tell you today, never stop learning. And that goes for theology and studying scripture, and that goes for living in the natural and focusing on your day-to-day life. Never stop learning. And it is my belief that if you stop learning, you will die.
All right.
All right? That's point number one. Point number two. And I'm waiting for the note takers to get back so I don't have
I got you. I'm listening. I got you. Go ahead.
Because y'all don't be focused.
I'm focused. What's number two?
Study areas of curiosity. So study areas of curiosity. Anything that interests you, anything that sparks your curiosity, study it. It doesn't matter where you start, because it's my belief that wherever you start, you will have to go back and get what you missed, or you'll be all over the place in your studies, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're ever struggling trying to figure out what should I study, what should I be learning, just whatever you're curious about, whatever comes to your mind, do some research on it. And you have one of the coolest tools ever known to man in this thing right here. It has nearly anything that you want access to. As long as you got an internet connection, you can find whatever you want. Remember, I grew up, and sometimes I'm still locked, and I always have to remember when we talked about never stop learning. sometimes I keep thinking of subject, go to the card catalog. Once you go to the card catalog using the subject or the keywords or whatever, and then you get some books and you get a Dewey Decimal number, and then you have to find that section in the library and
With that card.
with the card from the card catalog, go down and find that book on the row, and the Dewey Decimal System tells you kind of the subject area, so you know where to go in the library, and then it'll help narrow down what shelf you need to be looking at because it's in order. Well, you don't have to do that anymore. Now, whatever you're looking for, you can. In fact, the technology is so to this day that you can just go to Chat GPT. There's an app, Chat GPT, and then China just came out with another one. I forget, Blue Seek or something. And you just tell it what you want, and it'll pull up anything that you want in very easy to read chunks. I was pretty amazed at the ability to do that. I still kind of like doing it my way, going to Google and getting some links and clicking and going. But there are all kind of ways that you can gain knowledge, and just put it in your smartphone there or your smart device, and you have nearly the whole world's worth of knowledge at your fingertips. That is amazing, and I don't know why we don't take more advantage of it versus looking at reels all day, which I do my fair share of looking at reels because those are educational as well. But
Some.
just understand the power of the tool that you have and satisfy your curiosity. Start looking up things and studying, and never stop studying, because I believe if you stop studying and stop learning, you will die.
True.
Point number 3, and this is the last point for today. Last point for today. It's okay to start with conclusions. Write it down. It's okay to start with conclusions, but be open to challenging them. So some of you are curious about things and you have conclusions. You think you figured it out. And so the natural tendency sometimes when you go study is to prove yourself right. So I have my conclusion and I go into the material, I go into the Constitution, I go into the law library, I go into the DSM for medical stuff, or whatever the authoritative document is in your field of study. You go to that looking to answer the question and prove yourself right. And I was like, okay, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with starting with a conclusion, but just understand that you need to be open to the fact that there could be something different. So challenge your conclusion, which is what I do most of the time. Is I start with a conclusion and I say, well, how can it be wrong? And I start looking for the ways that it's wrong. Then I start looking for the ways that it's right. And in there, I'm all over the place, which takes me to my next point for today. So that's the 3 points that I want you to write in your notes. It's okay to start with conclusions, but be open to challenging your conclusions. All right, now he's going. This is what we do all day.
He's talking to somebody.
All right, we're in the middle of my sit down.
Hey,
Speaking
stop
of
it.
tongues.
Hey, go home.
Want to go home?
Go home.
Sit down. Okay.
All right, you don't want to go home, so you better sit down and be quiet.
After this.
Where was I? We were talking about, I gave you your 3 points, and I was making a point that no matter where you start, you might end up a lot of different places. And that brings me to where we are today. Today, the way my brain works is there's always a bunch of thoughts in there, and the thoughts are all connected. I believe in my mind, in the way things work for me, everything's connected. So if I have one thought, there's probably an infinite number of other things that's connected to it. So imagine a web. So if you got the web, at a spider web, and you got the center, that's my initial thought. That's what I come into the study, or come into thinking about something, just wondering, daydreaming. No matter if there's a central thought, and from that central thought, there are all sort of things connected to it. So at any one time, I'm in different places. Even though I start with a central thought, I could be way over here, but I never lose sight of the central thought. So I always come back to it. And so just think of a web or a network. That's how my brain works. Everything's just interconnected. It's non-linear. I don't know if you study linear or nonlinear thought, but my thought process is when I explain things to people, I'm very linear. I'm very point to the next, to the next, to the next. But even in my mind, there's that path is linear, but in another direction, there's something else going on. There's all sort of things always going on in my mind, and they're all connected. And so to most people, they're like, why did he talk about, where did that come from? Well, to me, they're always connected. So that's important for you guys today, because I could not go on in Acts and keep reading because I got stuck on something. And when I got stuck on it, my curiosity would not let me go forward. And so I just taught you, hey, if you don't know what you need to study, start with your areas where you're curious. And so I'm curious about something that Luke wrote last week, and I'm wondering, why did he put that there? And I can't go on. Like nothing else will make. I'm singularly focused on this thought of, did Paul make it back to Jerusalem in time for the day of Pentecost?
Okay.
Luke wrote that, and if he wrote it, what did I tell you?
He was there.
No, he was there, but what if Luke includes something? It means something. It's important.
Oh, okay.
There's a level of importance. Luke is very technical in his writing, and he includes details for reasons. Now, the reasons are not always why we're here. No. The reasons are not always clear and not always obvious to us. And so the point is always to, when you see Luke write something, he includes a fact, he includes a statement that seemingly doesn't necessarily point to anything. Always come back to that and figure out, or try to figure out, why he wrote that. And so in the last lesson, we talked about 50 days, right? Mm-hmm. 50 days. And I was focused on the fact that Luke said that Paul wanted to be back in Jerusalem by the day of Pentecost.
Right.
I could not go forward until I counted the days. And so I'm in my studies trying to count the days. And we're going to count the days here in a second. But remember, I told you we might not get through it, because what time am I supposed to finish? I said 30 minutes.
Go ahead. I mean, it took 30 minutes to get here, so it's okay. 30 minutes is up.
We might not get all the way through counting the days, but the point that I want to make is I can't go forward and talk about the next thing in the story, because Luke gets to a town. I think it's Miletus, Miletus. However you said Miletus. We'll go back, but he gets there and it's just south of Ephesus, and he didn't go all the way up to Ephesus. He told the people from Ephesus to meet him down there, and then he talked to them and told them, and we'll get to that probably next time, where he talked to the people from Ephesus and basically told them, hey, I'm not coming back. I'm probably going to die. So just keep doing the right things. That's what he told them. And then he sailed off. But I can't get to any of that till I understand, well, did he make it back in time for the day of Pentecost? Like, I don't know why that's bugging me. I don't know why that tugs on me, but I can't study anything else until I count these days up. Now, when I said count the days, the first thing that came to my mind is a poem. It's a poem. How Do I Love Thee is the name of the poem. How do I love thee? In the first line of that poem, the poem says, how do I love thee? Let me count the what? Ways.
However, y'all know I was thinking of Tony Braxton, right? Let me count the ways.
So I wasn't thinking of Tony Braxton. I was thinking about, what's her name? Elizabeth Barnett Browning.
Oh.
Elizabeth Barnett Browning. She's a poet. Elizabeth Barnett Browning. But when I first thought about it, I was like, oh, how I love thee. Let me count the ways. And in my approach, I'm thinking Shakespeare. So I'm thinking Shakespeare, and I'm like, well, let me go and make sure, because if I'm going to tell you all about a poem, I need to be able to tell you a little something about it.
Okay.
And so I had to go back, and because I don't remember where I learned that. I most likely learned that particular poem
in school
at West Point.
Okay.
We have EN 102. EN 102 is our English 102 class, where we do a lot of literature, and we study poetry and that sort of thing. And which is, by the way, one of the West Point is, and I think I've taught y'all this before, when you're reading passages, I learned in that West Point EN 102 class, and I had to take it twice. That's a long story, but I took that class twice, so I got it down. When you read a passage, any group of words, whether it's a 5-word phrase or a 2-word phrase, any phrase, you break that phrase down to all of the different parts and then see how it connects. It's the same way that I study the Bible. So yes, that's a good tool to use. Anytime you read something, learn everything about that particular phrase and how it relates to the rest of it to get full understanding of what the author was trying to get you to write. That's a bonus. I forgot all about that. That's where I learned that technique that I use even to this day. But it's the technique I use. Anyway, nonlinear. I'm thinking about counting the days. I want to count the days. And the poem that came to mind is, "Oh, how I love thee. Let me count the ways." I could not come in here and talk to y'all about a poem that I don't even remember where I learned it. I'm assuming at West Point we read that in EN 102. But I thought it was Shakespeare. Come to find out, it wasn't Shakespeare. It was Elizabeth Barnett Browning. And it was still kind of odd, though. I'm like, why does that sound so much like Shakespeare? Like, why did I think Shakespeare when it's a completely different author? And then you realize, well, it's a sonnet. That particular poem is a sonnet. A sonnet is a poem with 14 lines, usually in iambic pentameter. So 10 unstressed and stressed syllables within a line. It's really kind of a natural way of speaking, unstressed and stressed. And some guy actually did an experiment where he flipped it, because he says English lends itself to this style of speaking, and he flipped the stressed and unstressed, and the cadence and the rhythm was way out of whack. It didn't sound like English at all. And so English is generally a unstressed and stressed as we speak. Anyway, I'm not going to get into all the details of the poem because I could and go rhyme schemes and all that sort of stuff. But what I want you to know is I studied the form, the sonnet form, and because most people think that Shakespeare created it, but Shakespeare did not create it. It was actually Italian in origin, but Shakespeare has his own form of sonnet. He uses 3 quatrains and a couplet, where the other guys use 8 and 6. Anyway, don't worry about all of that. Just know that it's a form that Shakespeare made famous, and most people know the sonnet. When they think sonnet, they think Shakespeare. This lady, the author of this poem, grew up in England. So it would make sense that she would be very familiar with the form. She'd be very familiar with Shakespeare's works, both his plays, his poetry. She would be very familiar with it. But the more and more I studied her, I learned some interesting things. She was the first one in her family born in England. Her family for 200 years was in Jamaica, and they have sugar plantations, and they employ slaves. But for whatever reason, her dad wanted the children, and she was the first of 12. Her dad wanted his children to be born in England. And so she was the first one born in England and grew up in England. And she was Christian. And remember, we talked about never stop learning, never stop learning. Well, she is a Christian and wanted to really understand the Bible. And so when she started studying, she taught herself Hebrew, just so she could be able to read the Old Testament in Hebrew and learn from the original language, or at least one of the original languages that the Old Testament was written in. Mm-hmm. Then after she did that, she started learning Greek so that she can do the same thing for the New Testament. And beyond that, she was such a good Christian that she participated in a lot of missionary work. Okay. What a connection. What a connection. And I'm telling you, I'm just sitting there and I said, I want to count the days. I want to count the days. And then that led to remembering that poem and remembering that poem. Remember, I told you, never stop learning. Wake up, big boy. Never stop learning. That led me to studying about the sonnet form, studying about the author, and learning some interesting things about the author, namely the fact that she was a Christian that was never stopped learning. taught herself Hebrew, and then studied Greek a little bit later on. Never stopped learning, and led me to this poem that I remember today when I was talking about counting the days.
Okay.
That's how my brain works. So when you hear me talking about Elizabeth Barnett Browning, and you're trying to figure out, well, how does that have anything to do with Let Me Count the Days of the Bible and Luke writing about Paul and his journey on his third missionary journey as he's finishing up, coming back from Greece and working his way back down over to Jerusalem. That's how my brain works. Anybody work? How do your brains work?
Mine works in a similar fashion. I like to dive deep into some of the material.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right, ChatGPT is really good. Did you ask ChatGPT any questions? Okay.
It's a good tool. I'm just not a believer.
Okay.
And the reason why I'm not a believer is because I'm just a skeptic of, I need to do my own stuff. And so that might be a good start. But even if ChatGPT gives me something, I'm still going to go back and research all the stuff that ChatGPT says. And so
Right.
I'm going to cross-verify and cross-reference. And so if I'm going to do that, I might as well do that anyway. And most people, like even when I pulled up this poem, it has a link to Elizabeth Barry Browning. That's her bio. You click on that, and then you read the bio. And so I don't necessarily need ChatGPT, but I imagine if I was in school and needed to write a paper real fast, I imagine that could be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not a tool of choice for me. All right. Y'all ready to count days?
Sure.
Monday, Tuesday.
How much time we got? Let's go 10 minutes.
Okay.
Put 10 minutes on the clock.
Yeah, I heard that. Put 10 minutes on the clock. Somebody beat me when 10 minutes is over.
No, just put a timer right now. Put 10 minutes on the clock.
Really?
Yeah. Because you already have the points.
Set a timer for 10 minutes. Got the point.
You already have the points. You already kind of understand how I'm thinking about this, my train of thought. Because most of this is not necessarily to give you answers. I'm always trying to give you techniques and tools to be able to study this stuff for yourself. My conclusions doesn't necessarily have to be your conclusions. I think we'll get to the same conclusions, but how you get there and how I get there may be different. I'm just showing you how I get there and giving you some of the tools. And I've already told you the main tool is that smart device. Use the Bible itself, and I have the Bible app and I have Bible Gateway on my phone. I have both apps, and I use them both because they're different in their approach, especially on the search engines. So the Bible app is very literal, very specific. Whatever words you put in, that's the words that you're going to get out in terms of your search. Bible Gateway app kind of is more of a subject. It's more intuitive, and so it tries to figure out what you were thinking about as you put in your query. And so Bible Gateway gives you a little bit more stuff. So between the two of them, I'm able to find what I need to find as I'm studying very quickly. And so
YouTube as well. Sometimes I need that just for a visual.
Which one?
YouTube.
Okay. Yeah, and definitely use YouTube. But the only thing I stay away from YouTube is I don't necessarily like to study other people's sermons. I don't necessarily like to take what they say and now that becomes the law or the gospel for me. I like to read the scripture and study the scripture, and sometimes it'll introduce something on me that I hadn't thought about before, and I have to go study that some more. So let's go back to, what would I say, chapter 20, verse 6. And that's where we got the chalkboard out.
So let me clarify, YouTube, but not sermons. But I usually look at the reading of the scriptures or animation.
Some breakdowns and some animations.
Mm-hmm.
Not so much sermons, but there are guys that do scholarly studies on different Bible passages. Mm-hmm. Not so much interpretation, but just, hey, here's what it says, and here's places on the ground where these things happen, and they show maps and more of a scholarly approach. All right. Mm-hmm. So let's count days. Because I want to know, did Paul make it back to Jerusalem in time for the day of Pentecost, which is 50 days from when?
Feast of Weeks?
No, that is the Feast of Weeks.
So Feast
Big sacrifice, I think.
Feast of Unleavened Bread was 7 days. Feast of Weeks.
I mean-
Pentecost, 50 days.
I mean, the last one I remember was 50 days from resurrection.
50 days. I don't think it's 50 days from was it 50 days from resurrection? So Leviticus 23, and we'll go back but bottom line is somewhere in here we got to count 50 days.
Okay.
Either it's from Passover, either it's from the days of unleavened bread,
Let me see if anybody has any. Anybody have any response? Any guesses?
or from resurrection. Some kind of ways we got to get to 50 days and make sure Paul is back in Jerusalem before 50 days is up.
Mhm.
And I'm gonna give you a hint. Luke never says, and Paul made it back in time for the day of Pentecost.
We got a comment. It took 25 minutes to get here.
Okay. That's fine. I don't worry about time.
That's why we had to set a timer.
What time? How much time we got now?
We got 6 minutes.
6 minutes. All right, we're gonna count in 6 minutes.
Okay.
And so Luke never tells us, hey, he made it back in time, but he gives a detailed accounting of when he left Philippi all the way to the time that he got to Jerusalem. There's a point Luke's making, and I think I got his point, but I won't talk about it right now.
Okay.
But he never says, and he made it back. And so he made it a point to say he was trying to make it back, but he never said he made it back. And so I'm stuck. I can't go forward till I see if he made it back in time. Between verse 20, chapter 20, verse 6 and chapter 21, verse 17, that's and 17 is when he makes it to Jerusalem. 21:17 is when he makes it to Jerusalem. So we're not going to read it all. We got to skim and scan to try to see where days are. So if you go to chapter 20, verse 6, where's 6? But we sailed away from Philippi after the days of unleavened bread. So we count from the days of unleavened bread. And then he says, and in 5 days we joined them in Troas. So that's 5 days right there. So we're going to write down 5 days. So I'm counting these days up.
Right.
5, right?
Okay.
And then he says, where's my Bible? 6. 5 days, and we joined them in Troas, where we stayed 7 days. So let's write. Can you write 7 up there for me?
Mm-hmm. Here?
Yep. So that's 5 and 7. How many is that? That's 12.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Then the first day of the week came together.
Ready to depart the next day?
Mm-hmm.
So is that a day?
He said they were in Troas for 7 days. So we already counted those days. And then it says from Troas to Miletus.
Okay.
So they sailed to Assos, intending to take Paul on board, for he had given orders. And he walked. Remember, I told you he walked from Troas to Miletus, to Assos, I mean. And when we met us in Assos, we took him on board and and then we sailed from there. And
That's
the next day.
That's a day?
Yep, so we're going to count a day right there.
Okay.
So it's going to add one more day. All right.
That's 13. Okay.
Came opposite of Chios. The following day, so then one more day, they traveled and they were in Samos and stayed at Trigilium. So add one more day.
Okay.
Then one more day, they were in Miletus.
Is that another day?
Yep.
Okay.
For Paul had decided to sail past Ephesus so he would not have to spend time in Asia, for he was hurrying to be at Jerusalem, if possible, on the day of Pentecost. So that's where we start last week. All right, so let's go from there. Miletus. So when he got to Ephesus, he talked to the brothers. He had them come down. And he talked to them. He talked to them.
So what verse are you on?
I'm kind of skimming through chapters like 26, 32. I'm just kind of working my way down, trying to count days.
Okay. 15.
So he's warning. So, brethren, I commend you to God, His grace, which is able to build you up and to give you an inheritance, sanctified. And he talked about he with his hands, and he talked about taking care of the poor. And then we have this where he quotes Jesus, and he says, "It's more blessed to give than receive."
Mm-hmm.
So it works through there. And then when he had said these things, he knelt and prayed with them all. Then they wept freely and fell down on him and accompanied him to the ship. So it didn't say if they sailed the next day or not, but it said, now it came to pass. So now we're in chapter 21.
Mm-hmm.
Now it came to pass that when we had departed from them and set sail running straight course, we came to Kos the following day.
That's another day.
Yeah, Kos the following day to Rhodes. So that's one more day. No, you just added one day, right?
Okay, yeah.
And from there, in a ship sailing over to Phoenicia, we went aboard. We sighted and we passed sail to Syria, and landed at Tyre. Ship was to unload her cargo. And find the disciples. How much time we got?
30 seconds.
We stayed 7 days, so add 7 more days.
Okay. What verse are you on?
I'm on verse 21, chapter 21, verse 4. And find the disciples. We stayed there 7 days in Tyre.
Mm-hmm.
And then Paul told them in the Spirit they're going to go to Jerusalem. When we had taken leave from one another, we boarded a ship and returned home. And when we had finished our voyage from Tyre, we came to Ptolemais, greeted the brethren, and stayed with them 1 day. So add 1 more day.
Okay.
Okay, we're almost done. I can make it if y'all let me.
Okay.
Because we got to get to 17, and I'm on verse 8 right now. On the next day, we were Paul's companions. We who were Paul's companions departed and came to Caesarea and entered the house of Philip, who was one of the 7, and stayed with him. Now this man had 4 virgin daughters who prophesied. They prophesied and told Paul, really don't go to Jerusalem. Now I'm on verse 12. Now we had heard these things, and then we answered, what do you mean? And Paul said he was going to go anyway. And they stopped talking to him. So now I'm on verse 15.
Okay.
And after those days, we packed up and went up to Jerusalem. Also, some of the disciples from Caesarea went with us and brought with them a certain Manason. Come on, stay with us. Stay with us. Of Cyprus, an early disciple whom we were to lodge. And when we had come to Jerusalem, the brothers received us gladly. So he didn't say how many days he was in.
Manson?
No.
That's a certain man. Cyprus?
No, where were they?
After those days were packed up, went to Jerusalem.
Departed and came to. He didn't say how many days they were in Caesarea.
Okay.
So how many days do we have right now? We have 5. 24.
Mm-hmm.
So 24. And then we still don't know how many. He made it to Jerusalem, but I still don't know exactly. I don't know if he made it back before the day of Pentecost. But
which was in Jerusalem.
Yeah, that's where he was trying to get to, Jerusalem. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if he made it back within 50 days, and Luke doesn't tell us. But so why does he tell us? Why does he give us an accounting of all of these cities? And that's the last thing I'm talking about. It's just a general question to you guys. Why do y'all think Luke told us that Paul was trying to get back for the days of Pentecost? He gave us a detailed accounting for everything that happened between the time we left Philippi all the way to Jerusalem, except for when they got to Caesarea. He didn't tell us how much time they spent in Caesarea. That's 24 right there.
Mm-hmm.
Do we believe he stayed in Caesarea 26 days?
Why not? Well, not 26 days. Oh, before. I don't know. How far is Caesarea from Jerusalem?
Just a hop, skip, and a jump. They just walk right down.
So he probably made it.
Probably took him a week to get down from Caesarea. So that's another 7 days just to travel from. Because we learned that before. We learned how far it is from Caesarea to Jerusalem. We learned that early in the chapter. But I'm gonna call it. I want to say it's 60 miles. I'll go back and do the research, but so we can say it's between 4 and 7 days to get from Caesarea back down to Jerusalem walking or riding on a cart or so. And so that's 31 days. So it's still 21. So based on this, it's likely he made it back in time for the day of Pentecost, but we don't know for sure. And so I did all of that work and all that web and all that interconnecting to still not know if he made it back in time. But remember I told you, if Luke writes something, he writes it for a reason. What was the reason that he told us that Paul was trying to get back in time for the day of Pentecost?
It must have been important to him, obviously.
No, we know the day of Pentecost is important to him, but why did Luke include that fact in there? Why did he include that fact and then give us this accounting right here of what they did this day, 4 days here, 4 days there, 1 day, 1 day, 1 day, 7 days? Why did he do that?
So we could keep track of why he didn't make it. He must have had some mission somewhere else.
No,
What do y'all think?
What do y'all think? Why did Luke tell us that Paul was trying to get back in time for the day of Pentecost, and then he gave us when he left Philippi, and then he gave us a detailed accounting all the way up to Caesarea, and Caesarea is close enough we can kind of estimate, the number of days that he had left. Nobody knows?
Nobody knows.
Nobody. Well, I mean, and I don't know for sure, but when I'm reading it, I realize. Sit up, man. You wandering off on us. Playing too many games last night. All right. I'm almost done. How much over am I from the 10 minutes?
Just finish what you got there.
But the reason why I think that he did it this way is because all of the other cities where Paul went, something happened. And so, and Luke would tell us, hey, when he got there, what did he do?
He preached, found the synagogue.
Went to the synagogue, and what happened?
Preached at the synagogue.
Some people got it.
Some people got it. Some people didn't.
Some people didn't.
Were undecided.
Some people were undecided, but the people that didn't, what did they do?
They tried to kill him.
They tried to kill him. They would be trying to kill the people that weren't trying to get it would try to kill him. And so Luke would write every time that he went to the city and what he did. And then there was a point where he didn't go to the synagogue. He would go to a different place and teach and go across to the next door or go up to the schoolhouse, or he would teach at different places. And Luke would tell us that. But what happened when Luke started naming all these other little cities, Paul didn't stay there. And so Luke had to kind of give us a clue. Hey, the reason why Paul didn't do the normal routine in all these cities is because he was trying to get back to Jerusalem. So, yeah, he stopped at all of these cities. And I'm telling you, all these cities that he stopped, some cities had brothers already there and people that already had gotten the word of God and already knew about Jesus and was already, so he was received by brothers in some places. Some places he wasn't received by brothers. Some places he got to, there was no brothers there, or there was brothers there and he sent and got more brothers and sisters in Christ. Some places people got on the ship with him. Some places people, walked him to the ship and then they got him on the ship, saw him out of town, and they went back home and he went. And so all of these things are a good accounting of the things that happened and letting us know that, hey, when he got to these cities right here, he didn't stay because he was trying to get back to Jerusalem. And remember I told you before, about 10 lessons before, 5 lessons before, where we're at a point where everybody in that world knows about Jesus Christ now. So it's not a matter of they don't know. It's a matter of willful disobedience. Willful, hey, I don't believe that crap, and I'm going to believe in Yahweh that was Isaac and Abraham and Jacob. All right? And so people just, if they don't if they're not getting it now, it's not because they hadn't heard it. It's just because they just are not getting it. And so what Paul is doing on this is his third missionary trip. All he's doing is reinforcing the things that he had already done, going to visit the brothers, going to visit the churches to see how they're doing, make sure they're still functioning. If they got problems, working out their problems. And he went to all these cities. He just passed through and was just trying to get back to Jerusalem. That's the only reason why Luke put it there, just to explain why there's no more stories. There's nothing else really happened here because we didn't even get past the dock. We got to the dock. We got off the ship because we had to change ships. We saw some brothers there. They met us over there. We ate, lived with that, got back on the ship, and we were just moving around.
He didn't pick up anybody on his journey?
Yeah, he picked up, and it talks about the people that he picked up in different places, and how in Caesarea, some people went with him. A whole lot of families went with him down to Jerusalem. So that's all in there. I skipped over all of that part because I just wanted to count the days, and I did it with you guys. I didn't do it before. I didn't do it before you guys. We just did it here now. And I just realized.
Some days. We gotta go back and look then.
No, I did that part. I saw where all of the days were. I just didn't add them up, and I just didn't count them. And I knew that we got from Philippi to Jerusalem between chapter 20 verse 6 and chapter 21 verse 17.
Okay.
So everything's in between there. So we can go back and y'all count them up with me. And I always tell you, don't believe what I say. Go back and you count them for yourself.
Count them up. Count the days.
But
Oops.
no matter how, remember I told you I couldn't go forward until I figured that out.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized it wasn't even important. It's important that Luke wrote that he's trying to get back for the days of unleavened bread, but he wrote that to explain why we ran through all these other cities.
Okay.
We were running through all these other cities because we were trying to get back to Jerusalem. All right. That's why he wrote it there. All right. And so it turns out the exact number of days wasn't necessarily important because remember, he doesn't come back and tell us that, oh yeah, he got there in time or he didn't get there in time.
Mm-hmm.
Based on what we've counted up so far, it's more likely than not that he got back to Jerusalem in time for the day of Pentecost.
Okay.
And then we're going to read the rest of that after that. Now, so when we come back next time, we're probably going to go back to chapter 20, verse 13 or so, and talk about what happened when he talked to the brothers at Ephesus. I mean, no, the brothers that came down from Ephesus. He was in Miletus or Miletus, however you want to say that. He was there, and he sent and had them come back down. And so when we pick up next time, now I can go forward. Now I can keep going because now I understand what the days were all about. That makes sense to you guys?
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's go. Popcorn, you coming to prayer? He's over there. Can't find him, so. All right, close it up.
Our Father,
Our Father,
who art in heaven,
who art in heaven,
hallowed be thy name.
hallowed be thy name.
Thy kingdom come,
Thy kingdom come,
thy will be done,
thy will be done
on earth
on earth
as it is in heaven.
as it is in heaven.
Give us this day
Give us this day
our daily bread.
our daily bread.
Forgive us our debts,
Forgive us our debts
as we forgive our debtors.
as we forgive our debtors.
And lead us not
And lead us not
into temptation,
into temptation,
but deliver us from evil.
but deliver us from evil.
For thine is
For thine is the kingdom,
power,
the power,
glory,
the glory,
forever.
forever.
Amen.
Amen. Go in peace. Catch y'all next time.
All right. Y'all go in peace. Have a great week. Enjoy the Super Bowl. And we'll be here next time. We'll see you next time where we turn living rooms into life rooms. We love you. Have a good week. Bye.